Well, I thank you so much for taking time to do this, and we really appreciate you. And I was doing some research, and you have an impressive resume of working with athletes who are at the top of their game, such as Anika Sorenstam, Grant Hill of the NBA, Will Asher, who's a water skier, Eddie Cheever in Indy racing. So quite a
Hmm.
wide variety. And there's a lot more that I haven't mentioned. But I noticed you had a degree in engineering, and it's nautical engineering. Does that transfer any to your training, those thought processes?
I would think indirectly it sure does. Of course, as an engineer, you learn how to solve problems. You learn how to figure things out, either mathematically or through some engineering. And I think that really helped me out. I started working out when I was a little boy. Actually, I remember 5 years old, and I was messing around already. My dad made me a dumbbell, uh, had it made at the machine shop, and some electrical tape around it so it looks good. And I was slinging around dumbbells already at that age, and was always interested. So it kind of went parallel with my going to school and engineering and all the different sports I was doing. So I was always into it, and one kind of helped the other quite a bit. And that's where I would say, yeah, for engineering helped me quite a bit with that. It's all movements at the end,
True.
and movements are angles and speed and rhythm and things like that, and that really a lot of levers and all that really relates to from engineering to the end result in the sport and how you move and how you release power, generate power, release power. So this is how it all comes together. Yes.
Right, right. That makes sense. So I noticed when I did my research that you helped Anika gain over 25 yards of driving distance and improve her accuracy, and that she won 72 LPGA tournaments, 10 majors, and that's super impressive to me. And you've also had other golfers, 15 major championships and over 150 tournaments. And I couldn't believe it. That's really amazing.
Well, thank you.
So how did that help you with her driving distance and her accuracy?
Well, number one, I have to say she was the best student I ever had, which means she listened and she did everything I was asking her. She questioned a little bit, asked, she got an answer when she believed it, and we went for it. So that's something we as trainers or coaches are always looking for. A student or a player that wants to listen, wants to take it in, and yes, they can question it or ask questions. Why should I do it this way? And then they trust it and they go for it. So that was a big advantage with her, and she's highly intelligent on top of it, and just has that deep drive of performing and winning. And so we did a lot of strength exercises, movement exercises, but the main thing that she learned was connecting with body, and also learning how to generate a lot of power and release that power, meaning you generate a load and you release that load, and she was very good at that, and that really made a difference. And that's something I kind of got a knack for, of getting the most out of somebody's body, out of somebody's physique. Of course, every person is different. Obviously, every athlete is different, and everybody produces power in a different way and releases power in a different way. And that's something I kind of like see fairly easily in any sport. If it's football, throwing the ball, or if it's in a sprint, or if it's a tackle, or in golf, obviously the swing of a club. In water skiing, it's also generating power, releasing it, turning it into speed. In ski jumping, same thing. So every sport has the same attributes in that regard. And I think as a coach or trainer, your job is to find that attribute in that athlete and bring it out, and fine tune it to his sport or her sport, and maximize that potential. And obviously, it's not only the physical training; there's other things around it, from rest to equipment to nutrition, which I'm sure we'll talk here about it.
Right.
So that's all a big part, and it's all actually, if you take a pie of 5 different slices. So in those 5 slices, one of it is focus and mental, one of it is the coaching and training, one of it is a physical training, one of it is rest, and time off, and one of it is nutrition. So you have this pie chart, and there's 5 pieces. Each of them is 20% worth. In each one of those pies, you want to reach 100% of your potential. So if your nutrition is not 100%, you're missing out. If you're at 80%, you're missing out 20%. And if your rest time is not that great, of course you don't sleep enough, or you're out doing things you probably shouldn't be doing, and then you're missing a few percent there. So therefore, you want to maximize each one of those pies, and that's how you get to your full potential. And again, as a coach or somebody that organizes that coordinates that, you want to make sure that athlete hits on every one of his pies and gets 100% if possible.
Right. So you've had such a wide range of experience, even with MMA fighters, not just golfers, indie racers, soccer players, baseball players. So how can you bring that experience into giving advice to high school football players? And some of them are between 14 to 18 years old, and they weigh up to 280 pounds or more. So they're young people in adult bodies.
Yeah. So that's obviously in a sport like football, there are a lot of loads on the body, let's say. And when I talk about loads, is the sprinting, the stopping, the getting hit, and things like that. Even though even if it's only flag football, it's still a lot of impact a lot of times, and a lot of falls and things like that. So obviously, number one, I would say, is making sure the joints are supported, meaning doing exercises to build up the stabilizing joints in the ankles, in the knees, in the hips, in the shoulders, and the elbows, and so on and so on. We all know about the injuries they get. So I think that's number one, emphasizing that. Number two, I would say, is learning how to move fluently. Meaning you can do things with pure strength if you have it. And if you take a 200 something pound young 17-year-old, a lot of it might be done with strength, but his body is still not mature enough to handle the strength and the impacts through the strength. So there, we want to teach him how to move fluently, and we're all able to produce a lot of power, and let it be in throwing or again pushing or hitting. We can all produce a lot of power, but the thing is, you want to learn how to get rid of that power, how to distribute it, bring it either to the next player or turn it into speed. And that's something, the trainers should look out for. How does somebody move? How is it all through strength, or is it more through finesse and through letting the body move and flow, generating a flow? It's a little bit hard to explain. There's a little bit of philosophies in there too. So, that's, I think, the main thing. And besides that, I think what is very important is that, especially at that age, they go to school, they have to study. They got a lot of stuff going on with maybe a girlfriend or friends and being out and this and that, and then wanting to perform at a high level in their sport. So there's a lot going on. Do they get enough rest? Which I think is one of the biggest downfalls with high school sports, even with college sports, is do they get enough rest? Of course, they want to be part of everything. We're not going to just sit back like a professional athlete at that point. They don't have to study anymore. They got their life kind of in order. They don't have things coming and going. They can just concentrate on one thing. And I think for high school athletes, that's not always the case. There's a lot going on in their life, and they're growing up, and their body changes every few weeks. The arm is longer all of a sudden by ½ an inch within a month or so, and now the coordination is off. So that has to be recognized. So there's a lot going on: pressure from school, pressure from the parents, pressure from the coaches, and their brain is not quite developed yet. And so there's a lot going on that we have to look out for.
Wow, that's true. I didn't think of that. So this particular team I'm thinking of is a private Catholic high school here in Tucson that is at such a high level that they play teams in the Phoenix area. And I noticed that they have a 12-game season, and many of them play all 4 quarters of the game, and they get very tired. So what would you recommend for them for recovery?
Well, there's different products you can use, right? So for recovery, one thing that has been proven, for example, is a whey protein, and whey protein combined with some carbohydrates in a certain ratio. So that spikes your insulin and that helps the recovery. So one of the products we use is a Shaklee brand, which is it's called Build. And there's two different types of Build. One has more protein, the other one has a little bit less protein, and the ratios are a little bit different between the carbohydrates and the protein itself. But that stuff works really, really well for recuperation, but also to build. Meaning, if you want to build muscle, you need to feed it right. And as an example, we have a window of opportunity 20 minutes after workout, within 20 minutes after workout, to feed our body with the right amount of protein and carbohydrates. And ideally, it should be whey protein that has been proven the best to rebuild muscle. Of course, what we do with a good workout, we break down muscle tissue. It has to be rebuilt. So within 20 minutes after workout, there's a study about that. And also 2 hours later, you should have another one of those shakes to help you rebuild. But it also works really good for injuries as well. So if somebody has an injury, surgery or something like that, that stuff works really, really well in rebuilding muscle tissue, and not only muscle tissue, but also, ligaments, tendons, and so on. So it's very, very good. So it's called Build, and that's the product from Shaklee.
Right. I use that product to do my long distance cycling races. This is a mountain bike ride, but
yeah, I see that. Very
I've
nice.
done 111 miles and had to train in 3 months for that. So I was very grateful for the Build, and I didn't have to miss any work. The next day I felt fine. It's amazing.
With the Build, actually, we use it in golf. We use it quite a bit. Of course, rounds are 4.5 hours in general. And that's 6 days in a row, basically. There's pro-am, there's practice round, and 4 days for playing. So you're out there for quite some time. So, the sport itself is not as taxing as football, of course, but it's a duration of it, of being out there and concentrating and all that for that long. And there we use it like on hole number 9, halfway around. We take some physique and maybe mix a little bit of endurance in, which is like a hydrating drink, mix that in a little bit. And the good thing about it is it gets absorbed very quickly. It doesn't sit in your stomach. So it's kind of like pre-digested almost. So you take it in, it doesn't sit in your stomach. It's not like a sandwich or something heavy you would be eating out there, but it bothers your stomach, or even messes with your concentration. Of course, it takes blood away from your stomach and all that. So that works really well, and that's something even during a football game, that could have a couple scoops of that even in the middle of it. Of course, football game goes quite long as well, and there's some break times in between, of the players switching and all that. So there, I think it can work very well too.
Right. So that brings me to hydration. So a lot of these kids are training in full gear. Well, they all are during the hot summer months, and they start in August. So the coaches told me, one of the coaches said they don't hydrate enough, and some of them have cramping. So what would you recommend for hydration? Would you say hydrate the day before, or just before the workout? How many hours before?
Yeah, I mean, that's, there's a thing we call carbo loading. So you can do some carbo loading, which means, yes, the day before, even up to 24 hours before, you can take some extra carbohydrates, you can take some simple carbohydrates just to spike your blood sugar level too. But obviously something like a good hydration drink, where it's kind of targeted on what you get, and mainly the electrolytes you're getting with it. So it's not only about the carbohydrates, it's also about the electrolytes. Of course, what electrolytes do is very responsible for energy to flow in your body, so for your nervous system. So signals getting sent from your brain to your arms, your hands, your feet, your legs, whatever they need to do. If you are low on electrolytes just by a couple 3%, which can happen fairly quickly, once you're a little bit dehydrated, it happens very quickly. Then your performance, just from a mental standpoint, from a nerve system standpoint, is not there anymore. It goes down quite fast. And at a higher end level of any sport, that makes a big difference. Of course, the difference between a really good person, the best, and the second and third best might be only 1 or 2 or 3%. So there, it makes a big difference right quick. And obviously with a sport like football, where there's a lot of sweating going on, yes, you're in clothing, it's hot and all that, it makes a big, big difference, and it's very important. So I would start the day before. And the main thing about telling me to start the day before is make sure that we take something in, period. You know, that of course it's more important for them not to go below a certain level of carbohydrates and electrolytes in their system, because it takes so long to recuperate from that again. So even 2 days before, let's say, they do whatever, you know, in practice, and in practice a lot of times they don't drink enough, or they go, you know, they do other stuff, and we let that come down that level, and we're dehydrated a little bit. It might not show at all because we're not performing at a high level at that moment, but it drags down the road. So a day later or 2 days later, you're still deficient because it takes so long to catch up again, especially if you've been really dehydrated. So therefore, I think it's an ongoing process, which means even if I say, okay, you know, the night before, eat some extra pasta and, you know, load up on a couple electrolyte and carbohydrate drinks, it's not enough. It should be an ongoing thing. There should never be a stop of that.
Right. Now, Bob has told me, our mutual friend Bob, who introduced us, Bob Ferguson, he said the FDA has recalled many brands of sports nutrition products, and those big cans of protein powder and hydration products look great in the store, but they're often contaminated, untested, and poor quality, and have poor results. So
Right.
Can you explain why you use Shaklee Sports Nutrition with your clients? And what is the Shaklee difference that gives your clients that edge?
Yeah, we've been using Shaklee products, I want to say it's 25 years now, pretty much, because it's almost 26 years now. So, and back then, you know, the supplement market was really Wild West. There's still some of that left, Wild West today, which means there's a lot of brands coming up, selling the hottest product, making a nice commercial, you know, it looks good, sounds good, sell it, sell it, sell it. And after a year or so, we're usually gone again. Of course, something was wrong in the product. The FDA has no chance to keep up with it. It's happening so fast, a lot of that. And also what's happening with the FDA, can only step in when there's something happening. They can't step in beforehand, really. And that's what was a problem like 20 years ago with ephedra and all those things, you know, weight loss products. It was the same thing. The EPA couldn't step in until there was complaints, and then they were able to step in and test, and then put out regulation or you know, shut companies down or the products down. So, but anyways, with Shaklee, we've been to headquarters a lot of times. We've been to their laboratory. We were lucky enough to really meet a lot of the scientists that have been there for a long, long time. And so we really saw the process of it. And for me, it was critical. If I recommend something to a professional athlete, I have a liability. If I recommend something and they get tested, of course, they get drug tested all the time, and in golf as well, and every sport, we get drug tested all the time. If something would show up and I was the one that recommended it, I would be in deep trouble and would not, you know, be good for my reputation, obviously. So, and a lot of those athletes, you know, they make millions of dollars. So it's a big number you're dealing with, not only with a career. So I made sure it is the right stuff, and I made sure there is safeties in place and everything, and that's what Shaklee has. And I actually have a waiver I make my athletes sign that if they take anything other than what I recommend in terms of supplements, I take no responsibility, and just to protect myself. So, you know, for the 25, 26 years now, we've always been good to Shaklee. We've never had an issue with it. With Anika got tested twice in her last year of playing, for example, and, you know, never had an issue with it. So that's all good. And I just know how a company functions and how particular they are about the raw materials, the testing of raw materials, whereas, you know, Bob knows more about that than I do. Whereas, you know, I mean, sometimes 50, 60, 70 steps of raw material testing until it gets to a final product. So that's very, very important for me. And I think for any coach, for anybody that's recommending something like that, do your homework, you know, and make sure you're on the right side there.
Right. I heard they're certified by the Banned Substance Control Group. So Olympians can take the Shaklee products without any worry.
Right. Right.
I've always recommended. I used to help with bike patrol on the last 10 miles of the race, and I would find people cramping up, and I'd say, "What are you drinking?" And they'd say a certain brand that everybody knows, and I'd say, "Well, that doesn't seem to be working. Let's mix this up." And they were able to relax and continue and finish the race.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, the endurance actually used to be called performance.
mhm, mhm,
And if you look at the research that was developed for NASA, and so the astronauts are using it in pill form. And from what I know, still today they do it. We did a lot of tests for NASA because NASA commissioned that. I want to say it's probably 30 years ago or so we did that. Part of it was the Daedalus project. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where they pedaled a human-powered airplane. So, and we had to find a product to sustain the guy in the airplane on his bike to keep it powered. So, and that was like the ultimate test of endurance and how the product performance back then, endurance called today, is performing. So there is a lot of hydration drinks out there. Like you said, we know them all, the big names. They're all very colorful, any color you want. And the problem is a lot of times the ratios are not right, the quality control is not right, which means a lot of simple sugars in it, a lot of dyes and colorings in it, and artificial sweeteners and things like that. And that's just something our body doesn't need.
right.
We don't have a deficiency of that ever. So, and I think for kids, that are basically a big sponge that take everything in, not only from a brain standpoint, but also their body takes everything in, and whatever kids take in, it has a big impact in the future because your body kind of adjusts to it and wants more of that. So if you put a lot of bad stuff in, comes in, your body wants that at some point. Just like there's that sugar addiction that a lot of people have. That was all instilled as a child or as a adolescent. So there, it should be our responsibility too, not only for performance on the field, but also for the rest of their life. We're kind of responsible for them. Of course, they trust us. They want input from us. We tell them what to do. We yell at them sometimes to make sure they do it, so therefore we got to make sure we're responsible for what they get, what they do, and what the outcome is.
Right. I think quality matters because when I first started racing, I would look at that purple and blue and red hydration drink and I think, okay, it's going in me, but it's not coming out. So where'd it go?
Yeah,
still in
exactly.
there.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
no, thank you. I noticed I was looking at this team's schedule and they had 6 away games last season and they only had 2 wins and 4 losses. So I thought maybe travel seems to be a challenge and it could be rest, like you said. But what would you recommend as far as eating and all their nutrition and their sports nutrition when they travel?
Well, traveling is always a challenge, right? I traveled last year on the PGA Tour and with my player, and we were gone 27 weeks out of a year. So, and that's worldwide traveling. So it's not just, going to Boston or back. It's a worldwide all the way to Bangkok and Dubai and all that stuff. So what the problem is travel, you don't have access to good food easily. You're at the airport, you're at, on the plane and this and that, hotels. So it's not always that good. Plus, a lot of times, there's some nice junk food being put in front of you. So it's not always easy to say no. So there's a lot of challenges when you travel. Time schedule is off. So you don't have your regular breakfast and morning snack and lunch and afternoon snack and dinner. So that is off a lot of times. So there, I would say number one is travel prepared, meaning take food with you. When they have a bus ride for 4 hours, take food with you. They need some snacks. They can't be without food for 4 hours. That's too long for teenagers, especially if they're performing at that level. So, take some healthy snacks. Obviously, we know about fruits. We know about, some healthy proteins. It could be nuts and things like that. You can make a healthy sandwich for them. So I think we all know what healthy foods would be. So number one thing is being prepared. And to fill the void, a lot of times what we would do is we would prepare some shakes. So we had a shaker cup, have a powder in it. Would it be a recovery? Would it be like a meal type shake? Just to, which will make up for a full meal, where you know how much protein is in it, you know how much carbohydrates is in it. You can add some vitamins to it and so on. and have that ready to go. So all you got to do is pour a little bit of water in it, shake it, drink it. You had your meal, you had your protein, you had your carbohydrates, and we would always figure, on the athlete's weight, how much protein we need, how much carbohydrates we need a day. So usually it's like a 1-to-3 ratio between protein and carbohydrates. So we would mix those shakes accordingly. So it's a 1-to-3 ratio. So it makes up for a nice balanced meal. So I think preparation is a main thing, and taking stuff with you. So you do have a choice for good stuff. You're not stuck somewhere and all you can find is a hot dog stand or, your typical fast food place.
Right. I use the Shackley meal bars if I know
Meal
I'm
bars are
gonna
very
be
good.
out and about, or the snack bars, because it's healthy protein instead of
Yeah,
reaching for something bad.
exactly.
So my
Exactly.
goal for this team is to maximize their performance and their results so that they have the best college and career options should they be talented enough to continue in football. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to that about maximizing?
Yeah, I mean, with kids, it's really a special, especially with team sports, right? You have so many kids on the team, so the coaches and trainers have a huge responsibility, to deal with each one of them because they're all different, every single one of them. And as kids, I think we're more special than once we're an adult. They don't quite know yet what we want to do, what we're getting into, what we really like or not. A lot of influences from all kinds of people, from friends, from parents, from girlfriends, or this and that. So I think from a coaching standpoint and training standpoint, it's just finding what that player is good at, and and honing in on that. Obviously we got to find out what he's bad at too and work on that as well, but it always depends how you approach that. You can't just say, oh, you're bad at this, you're bad at this, we need to get it better. I think there's other ways to get to that without telling him that he's bad at something. So I think that's one thing. So basically a mental approach to to get them to understand what we need to do. And again, everybody is different, everybody learns different, and that's probably the hardest part of a coach or a trainer, to find out how does someone learn, what intrigues them, what makes them go, what gives them energy, what inspires them. That's something we need to find. Of course, we can't just clobber them and tell them, run 40-yard dashes 10 times every day for next week. That's not going to do it. So it has to be somewhat catered to that individual, especially at that age.
Right. And I forgot to ask you about the mental aspect. I know did you meet Bob Ferguson when you were at the Pacific Institute?
Yes, I actually went through a Pacific Institute curriculum.
Oh, okay.
So I went up there. I got to meet Lou Tice back then. I stayed there for a couple of nights, and it was absolutely stunning. Stunning to meet Lou Tice, of course, and our whole staff, and Bob, of course, and we actually did with Bob. Actually, I did 2 courses down here in Orlando with Anika was in it, so we had the Anika Academy. It was a high-end golf academy, and all the staff and Anika as well went through the whole curriculum with Bob and also I had some other tour players, which I got together, like 8 of them, and we did the same thing again. So obviously mental is a whole nother story, and I'm not a mental coach now. I can just say what I have seen over the years, and probably the easiest way to see mental instability in any sport is in golf, because all of a sudden we can't hit the ball anymore. All of a sudden the ball goes 30 yards left. We can't hit a putt from, even a 2-foot putt. A lot of times we miss because mentally is something off. So, we as coaches and trainers have to be careful how far we get into the mental aspect. Of course, we're not trained for it. At the same time, we got to be careful there isn't we call it shrink coming in and trying to turn the whole brain around. So it's a fine line of finding out what that person needs. And sometimes it's just maybe a little bit of encouragement. Sometimes it's just maybe looking at a problem from a different angle. So a lot of times we can see that as coaches if we have enough experience and if we have our eyes wide open and listen to the athlete, And obviously we learn their routines. Sometimes we can see, hey, the routine is changing. Why is it changing? Maybe there's trouble at home, or maybe he had a bad day, or whatever it is, and then we might think, oh, is there a mental problem? That might not be a mental problem. It's just there's something going on and he's not concentrating on the right things. And I think that's true for kids too. Of course, they go through so much, and again, we have to learn so much at that age, and so many emotions and everything. Where hormonal changes, you know, I mean, all kinds of things that are going on. So it's even elevated compared to a established professional athlete, you know, in his 20s and 30s.
Well, thank you so much. I think this has been a wonderful talk, and I've learned so much.
Well, thank you for letting me do this.
Yes, and I hope it gave you some ideas to help young people if you wanted to follow that path. But I know you've got your hands very full.
Yeah. It's fun though. It's very fun. I mean, it's great, and I'm lucky enough to work with young people. I just had a baseball player who's 15 years old, 210 pounds, just like you described earlier, 6'2", but a really good kid. And so it's a lot of fun to see that. At the same time, I have 70 and 80-year-olds that still want to get better at golf, or I'm doing something for pickleball next week, which pickleball is a huge sport now. I don't know if you kept up with that. It's incredible how big it's getting. I mean, LeBron James is investing in it, so that says something, you know. That's how big it is getting. So it's just as much fun to work with somebody like that, you know, a 70-year-old that still wants to move quick and gain some speed and hit some more distance, just like it is with working for a PGA player or a professional, you know, with Grant Hill. You know, the time with NBA was a great time. So it all has a lot about it, and that's what I love, you know, the contrast between the different sports and different players, different levels, different ages and all that. So
Right. It's never a dull moment.
No, try not to be. Yeah, when it gets dull, we need to go in.
Well, thank you so much, Kai. It's been a pleasure
Thank you, Susan.
talking with you.
All right.
And
All
you
right,
have
thank
a
you.
great rest of your day.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to have a chat with the coach if that helps, if that is wanted, you know. So no problem at all.
That would be wonderful. I'd be happy to set that up.
All right.
All right,
Thank you
take
now.
care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.